Welcome to our year-end episode of the Kaiju Network Podcast. I am your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. What's up, everyone?
So, here we are again, another year coming to an end. Hard to believe already. And
I know, right?
and we're going to start off a new year here in just a few days. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and hopefully you all do not have a Happy New Year. I mean, I do hope you have a Happy New Year. But yeah, I was wanting to do a number of score reviews again this year. And I did kind of do that a little bit, but things got a little hectic around the house, trying to get things ready for some family coming over. They'll actually probably be arriving as I'm doing this podcast. So I was just kind of scrambling around, and unfortunately I didn't get to as many scores as I would have liked to. I still did a few things. Also, anybody who is watching this live, and I think we're the only two that are watching this live right now, I'm going to make a little bit of a note on our Facebook page right now. Again, anybody who's watching this live, you can join in the fun as long as it's kaiju related. Chime in and
I know this episode should be pinned on the top part of our postings and stuff in the Facebook page. There.
Yeah, I'm still gonna add a quick note here, just saying we are live now, so that way, because we want to be talking to everybody.
But also, if you have a YouTube account or anything of the sorts, just make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell to get any future notifications of when we will be doing a live podcast or a commentary or uploading any sorts of videos in the future.
All right, and then with that, let's go ahead and dive in. One of the things we had discussed, I think, going back to kind of like the late summer, was whether or not we were going to, we were kind of in discussions as far as whether or not we might add a potential third co-host. Jason and I, over the last couple of months since October, have been talking it over a little bit more, and we had some interest. There were at least a couple people who were interested in either doing it mostly sort of full-time, meaning on just about every episode. There was one individual who was like, yeah, I might be able to come on for just about every episode here and there, but there may be times throughout the year I may not join. We have already, as of this recording and this broadcast, I've already contacted those individuals and told them that at the moment we aren't really looking for someone right now. We just kind of decided, with the way things are with our podcast and everything, I think we're doing okay right now, even though at times it does seem like it's a little hectic. But I think as of right now, we're doing okay. But we may have those individuals on as the occasional special guest or whatever. So thank you to those two guys who express interest in that. It does mean a lot to us that you express interest and would like to be a part of this podcast. We want everybody to try to join, which is why we're doing these live YouTube shows. It's not just that we're wanting to add content to our YouTube page. That's part of it, but we want everybody too to like join in the conversations as well. So again, unfortunately right now, we are not going to be needing at least a third co-host right now, but we're always up for people to come on as guests. That's something. Oh, excuse me. I'm hoping we can maybe try to do a little bit more in 2019, is get some more special guests on, not just celebrities, but just individuals, fellow fans, to come on and share a little bit of their love of kaiju and just tell a little bit of a brief biography about their love of the genre and all that, and just come discuss, a movie that we're reviewing or whatever it is. I would love to do more of that, but we're just to kind of let everybody know, if that's something that you are interested in doing, even if it's just a one-time deal, We ask that you have at the very least Skype, um, and also potentially a camera if we go live on the YouTube. But if you don't have a camera, that's why we ask for Skype, so we can at least record the audio and then upload all that later. So yeah, and then just get in touch with us. Our Facebook page is probably the best way to get a hold of us, because that's stuff we tend to on a practically daily basis. So we may even be reaching out to some of you, like the two individuals, just because, hey, that's what we should do.
Mhm.
All right, so
Yep.
do you want to dive into the recap of G-Fest this year, or what do you want to hit first?
I think we can probably re-dive, if that's ever a word, into G-Fest 25, and just to kind of get a feel of kind of the overall after, was it 6 months already?
Not quite. It's been like 5.5.
Yeah, it just seems like yesterday that we were just there
Yeah.
and everything. It's like time has just flown so fast already since G Fest, and here we are, just basically right at the doorstep of 2019 here. 2 days left, basically, but yeah, over kind of the overall theme for me. It tend it tended it seemed to get kind of gone a little bit faster for me. I'm not sure about you, but it's GFest 25 for me. I think it was kind of an okay event. The more I kind of think about it, for me, I mean, it's still light years better than GFest 21. Don't get me wrong about that, but I was kind of going through some of the videos that we've done on our YouTube page while I was still working on the new kaiju-network.com here recently. It just started to get back into doing that here, and like with some of the panels and everything, and kind of what you mentioned in the uh, kind of off camera and everything, is like uh, it's like you did enjoy some of it, but it seemed like you thought some of the panelists were a bit too harsh on certain things, like the new Pacific Rim
Yeah.
Uprising movie.
I know one individual who's a mutual friend of ours. He was honored to be part of that, because he was like, I was part of like what one podcast considered to be probably the worst panel of the convention. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything about you personally. I just thought I just thought there could have been a little bit more balance to that particular panel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the more I've thought back on it, I mean, um, and I think we've talked about this over the last like 2 to 3 years at least, maybe even a little bit longer, where it gets to a point. The first two G Fest we went to were like, to use a word Apple uses an awful lot, magical. Um, and it is, because when you go to, not only were those two times, not only our first two times going to a kaiju convention, but
Hmm.
they were our first times going to any convention. So this sort of, in a way, to use a sort of a disgusting term, just because I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, it sort of popped our cherry when it came to convention going. And so, um, you know, it really was fun. It was magical. And I will say too, I mean, just going back and really, hindsight, being 2020, the fact that that was like 7 years ago since we went to our first G Fest, and really kind of taking a look at some of the panels and the guests and all that stuff. there too. Um, I tried to get myself in a mindset. I'm like, okay, let's try to be as unbiased as possible. Like, were these first two G Fests that we went to really good G Fests? And after spending some time, looking at photos and kind of thinking things through from memory and all that stuff, and, looking at video we recorded and all that, I'm like, yeah, like those were actually, some good G Fests. Like, we popped into some good, we popped into two good G Fests that, is the reason why we have continued to go since then.
Well,
I
I
think
think I think
S21 was our first convention. I don't know if we would be still going or not.
well, I think too. One of the main reasons why we started going to G Fest since G Fest 19 was that uh, that year was when Akira Takarada uh,
Well, yeah.
was planning on coming into town or coming
Mm.
to the convention that year. And then we decided, you know what, let's do it. I know he was there. I think a couple conventions before that, we were kind of thinking about it, but we decided just to kind of not do it then. But then a couple of years later, it's like, you know what, I think the time is right. Let's just do it. So we just been kind of going there since G Fest 19. But yeah, go ahead. What you were trying to say about G Fest 21?
Well, yeah, I was just kind of saying, like, if G Fest 21 was like our first G Fest, I don't know if we would continue to go. Um, I guess some people have, and I've heard this an awful lot from certain Godzilla fans, like on social media over the years, where they say some Godzilla is better than no Godzilla. And then Shin Godzilla came along, and I'm like, no, it would have been better if there were no Godzilla. And so I'm kind of thinking, I'm just kind of like, G Fest 21, like, I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it to some degree. I just, I mean, for starters, I always enjoy going to the hotel and exploring that area. I mean, I always have a great time doing that every year, regardless of whether or not the convention itself is any good. But yeah, G Fest 21 was sort of a stinker. I looked back on it and I'm thinking to myself, maybe it wasn't quite as bad as what I thought. Um, but it's still, yes, I think was underwhelming in many respects. Um, but GFest 25, though, getting more back onto that, one of the things that I think for me, and with having almost 6 months gone by since the ending of that um, convention, part of me has even wondered, um, if believe it or not, if just the fact that the layout of the convention um, was of, part of the problem, and part of that issue is the fact too that you have, Bill Murray's Caddyshack restaurant in there that turned
Yeah.
out basically what had been Artist Alley for the last 2 to 3 years. And as a result, just about everything had to be shifted around. So that changed things quite a bit.
Well,
Um,
probably not too much, but
it was
um,
it was very noticeable.
well, that was obviously the most noticeable thing. But if you've seen our video of our Artist Alley on our YouTube page, there, I did a kind of a roundabout tour of it. Yeah, you can definitely. It was just way too crowded for the room that it was in. It was both in Love A and Love B in that corner of the lower level. They're kind of nearby where our like our favorite seating location is at there, and I think too with the last couple of years with Dojo Studios not really doing much video work in that tokusatsu room, which is right next to the dealer's room. I think, in my opinion, I think if Dojo Studios isn't continuing on with actually filming, or maybe doing some minimal work at future G-Fest conventions, I would say maybe just move Dojo Studios down to Love A and B, and then just have the Artist Alley in where the Tokusatsu room is. Because I think just by thinking of those two rooms together, I think that current Tokusatsu room is bigger than Love A and Love B.
Oh, easily. I do like your idea. I mean, I didn't think about that, and we didn't go to JD's panel this year, where he talks to everybody and gets feedback from people about their experience at that year's convention. The only issue I maybe could see with that setup would be because the Tokusatsu room, and in the past, even when they were filming stuff, it would, when the convention was getting ready to start, and then when it was ending, everybody goes out that wall there, and I'm almost wondering, because that Artist Alley has grown like every year, and I'm almost wondering if it would be a logistical problem trying to move everybody in, because some artists who would be up against that wall that opens in Dojo Studios, they wouldn't be able to set up until almost the last minute, because they would have to wait. In fact, you would have a number of artists, because you would have two sets of those big doors that open, because you have one that goes to the outside and then the other one that goes into the dealer's room. That set of artists wouldn't really be able to set up until the last minute. And then, like, when the convention came to an end, none of the dealers could really leave until those artists leave. Now, granted, that would be sort of an issue, but the thing is, though, too, most of those artists, I think, set up a lot more quickly than many of the dealers do.
Or how about this? Maybe just leave Dojo Studios the way they are, but then since I know the game room has been at the Ball Morale room for the last couple of years, and I don't think they've really have grown as much. I think it's just been the same size the way they have been. But I think, was it the first 2 years since we started to go to G-Fest, that they were kind of on the lower level?
They were in the Kennedy room,
and
right across from that little auditorium room.
Well, I think too, one of the years that they were in both Love A and B.
Yeah, I think it was 21. Maybe they were down there.
Yeah, I think they should move the gaming room back into that room. Or I know with, what was it, the sculpture or the art room, they opened up a new room for this year's convention. I think that would be maybe one of those two options, to move the gaming area and have the sculpture or the artist, like the art room or whatever it is, into one of those rooms, and then have Artist Alley in the Ball Morale room, which is much bigger, I would say, than or maybe possibly close to the same size as that. What was it, the Metro room where they used to be, but is now the Caddyshack restaurant there. And at least there's there's at least two doors where people can go in and out and everything. And I'd say it's plenty of room for artists, to sprawl out their things, and as well as for the fans to walk through and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're armchair quarterbacking all this, but like I said, we just didn't have time because we both were at different panels. ending at this year's G-Fest convention. Plus, like I said, too, with, excuse me, nearly 6 months behind us, I mean, you start thinking more about this, and so you're kind of like, oh, well, this is what could change. And Stan Hyde has been sort of one of the individuals who's helped organize G-Fest over the years. He is sort of the big modeler of kind of the I guess you could, I don't know, what would you call them specifically, like the
sculpture or
no, the organizers of G-Fest. He's been kind of the sculptor, model kit. I guess I just forgot the word. Champion. I'm just going to use that because I can't think of
connoisseur or whatever.
Use but one of those he's been championing that, and yeah, you get people in there every year submitting stuff, and I think occasionally too, like your build a model panels that they have occasionally going on through the convention. I think they get a decent amount of traffic going in through there. I really want to know, though, because some of those models I see almost repeatedly every year. Because I've seen some models like this year that I've seen in past G-Fests. And I want to know, just in general, like across Godzilla fandom, especially those who look to attend G-Fest and maybe attend G-Fest on a regular to semi-regular basis, how many of those individuals are actually so involved in modeling that that's maybe a hobby that they themselves take up?
Hello, you there?
Do it myself, but
sorry, your video feed broke up there for.
Well, I was just talking about, like, I'm sure YouTube picked it up, but yeah. Anyway, like, I can appreciate modeling, but I don't do it myself. It's just not something I'm that into.
Yeah, both of us don't even.
But I can understand why people are into it. But the thing is that, and this is just my perception, I'm maybe wrong about this, but it seems like just even in my lifetime, the number of model kits you see has significantly decreased. Like even in your big box stores, you don't find a whole lot of model kits anymore. I remember even when we were kids, we could find some of those remade Aurora model kits. Like you had one of those Godzilla ones and you bought a Kong one too. But you can't even find a whole lot. I mean, sure, if you got a Hobby Lobby somewhere near you, sure, you're going to find stuff like that.
Or Michael's.
But the thing is, like your Walmarts, as far as I'm aware of, don't carry them. Walmart and
Target doesn't. Walmart
may carry like model car kits, perhaps at best, if they do carry anything. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me like model making is not like what it was. It seems like when our parents were kids, when they were growing up, you're talking about the boomer generation and to some extent too, even Generation X, our sister's generation. It seems like those were the two generations that really took up model making, that model kits and all that stuff were really one of the big things to get involved with as part of your childhood and even to some people into your adulthood as well. And I've started wondering, and like I said a little bit earlier, yes, when we go there, there are plenty of models on display, and you get maybe a halfway decent crowd doing the build your own model panel. But I really wonder how popular it is, because I'm thinking, okay, especially if you're getting some of the same entrants every year or what have you, maybe it's time to consider downsizing the modeling and then that way put the modeling in a smaller room. And then that way, because do you remember our first G-Fest? Artist Alley was where they kind of have the autograph set.
Yeah. Now. Yeah, it's just literally right across the Tokusatsu room. Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually wasn't very big. That wasn't big. And just in the 7 years we have been going, it was even outgrowing that Metro room, which was almost like a banquet hall, just about. And they and I understand probably at least for this particular G Fest, they didn't have a whole lot of time to figure out what to do because I'm sure that Caddyshack thing just kind of threw everything for a loop and they had to quickly piece something together. So what they came up with was Love A and B and down that hallway there. So I'm
Mhm.
going to give them a pass on that this year. But my hope is that because now we know, you got that dumb restaurant there, mediocre food, by the way. And the fact too, like I just said a moment ago, I really don't think modeling is as I don't hear a whole lot of people talk about it anymore. I really
Yeah, because I think one of the years I just kind of peeked in one of the rooms I was in. I think I can't remember what GFest it was, but I remember they had it was in both Love A and B where they have the sculpture displays.
Mhm.
Um, and I just kind of peeked in, just kind of curious. And I think there was just at least a handful of people in there total. And that just kind of somewhat furthers your case of possibly just kind of start to downsize it, because like in one of the other smaller rooms, maybe like the Kennedy or one of the other smaller rooms that they have along that same lower level hallway there, I think it would be perfect for it because they've done the art room in one of those small rooms there.
Yeah, I mean, because the more I think about it, like even in some of the earlier G Fest, we would go into those rooms where they would have the models, and yeah, most of the time they were quiet, and it was just large spaces with even smaller spaces devoted to tables to displaying people's models. And I really think, JD, if you're listening, and Stan, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to knock on modeling. I just don't think it's as popular as it once was. But I do think the issue lies not just with the fact that you got a dumb restaurant in that one area now, but I honestly believe the big problem is the modeling because it takes up more space than I really think it should.
I
Um,
think so too,
I
to be
think
honest.
And I don't necessarily have a solution right now that I think is foolproof. Certain things that are just immediately popping into my head, I can understand all right away. Just some of the issues that could be had, but yeah, I do think just take at again, just thinking off the top of my head, taking Love A and B, um, making your model displaying room, because that's worked in the past before, and even then, not a whole lot of space is taken up. I mean, still, that those two rooms could still be used for something
But
better.
but then you run into another kind of situation where um, if you wanted to have that, but then you got, I would say, in the uh, out of all the times that we've been there, I think uh, there are, to me, there are two really fast growing ones. Obviously, the artist alley one, and then the other one you got the video game room where you got a lot of the younger kids, the younger generation, doing more of the video gaming, and then there's that card game
Yeah, I was just
type
gonna
of
say,
thing
I
too.
would argue that card game is actually growing. It's not growing as fast as Artist Alley, but I see good crowds in there all the time.
Hmm.
Not like the model room where, yeah, if you have a model making panel or whatever, yes, you get a crowd in there. But otherwise, most of the time it's for display and you don't get a ton of people in there consistently. Like something else you could do, and I forget maybe exactly what the size, maybe another solution, and maybe it's not a good solution because that one room may be small, but move the card game stuff down to Love A and B, and then move the model making up to that room where they've been doing the card game the last 2 years. I mean, that's maybe a solution. I don't know if that room would be big enough for the models, but it's something. But something has to be done. I think because that hotel is only so big, and the fact now we've lost a ton of space due to a mediocre restaurant, and yes, I'm going to keep saying that because it really was mediocre. Um, the Something has to be either eliminated or downsized. And like I said,
Or
I don't feel the need to eliminate model making. I think it is. I think it still is important to at least North American fandom because it was such a big thing, especially to the older fans. And I understand that, even though I'm not a model maker myself. I think it needs to be kept, but it does need to be downsized and
Or
downsized quite a bit because too much space has been given to model making and model displaying. And a lot of times that space is not utilized properly. So Artist Alley continues to grow, and it's one of the busiest places each and every year. I mean, I think even JD admitted when we went to his panel last year, I think he even admitted that, yeah, Artist Alley is like one of their fastest growing like sections, I guess is what you would call it. Because I think he's saying like each year we get at least a handful of new people that want to come in, and the trick is to try to find space for them. Something's got to be done, and I'm thinking either the Dojo Studios, because like, although granted, weren't they supposed to be coming out this next year with some new stuff? Weren't they?
I think so. From what we have heard, that there's supposed to be some new video that they're going to be doing.
Even then, like you were saying earlier, for at least 3 years, they have not been doing any filming in that room. All they've done is devote it to the occasional panel and like a Q&A with some of the people who have done filming for dojos.
Or just maybe just kind of displaying like little buildings and kind of like a little museum, which
Yeah, and that's a large space that is being wasted. What was it? 2 years ago, was it? One of the like top end either model or toy companies came in. What was it? YSMF or whatever it was.
something like that. Yeah.
They came in there. That was supposed to be a big deal, and it turned out to be nothing more than a table with a few prototypes on it. That's it. Wasted space. Wasted space. Either take the Dojo Studios and make that artist alley because that's plenty big enough, and you still may have a little bit of room to spare, perhaps to add some new artists in there. But yeah, I can, like I was saying earlier, there might be a little bit of an issue in terms of like logistics, but that shouldn't be too bad, at least in theory, the way I'm thinking about it. Um, but yeah, either that or Artist Alley is going to have to be in two different places. Like you're gonna, and this may involve getting rid of Love A and B, I mean not Love A, but maybe either getting rid of model making or getting rid of like monster massages. Although I know monster massages makes good money there every year.
It's really just kind of in that one of the really back rooms there
Yeah,
where you don't even
I'm
notice.
thinking either take a couple of those rooms and bring them together for the new model making, and then have Love A and B as like Artist Alley 1, and where the model making was this year, make that Artist Alley 2 or something like that. Even then, though, that's still not enough space for Artist Alley.
I think too, and I think I kind of mentioned it one time to you that one of these days the convention is going to eventually outgrow the
Well,
hotel
yeah,
itself. So I think, to me, they're going to probably have to start thinking about at least consider another location one of these days. Granted, like what you mentioned there, that sometimes they don't. It seems like they don't know how to utilize some of the space for some of these sections there. Granted, I'm not gonna like not being harsh or anything, but I think like what you also mentioned too, that they should better utilize that space too, and also there's a lot of the space within that hotel that's sit empty without any other kind of little meetings or anything in between the convention itself. And I'd say that they should utilize as much of the convention um, as they should without other kinds of like corporate meetings or anything that come in during the same time as G Fest there. But if they do, but then I would say possibly consider another hotel, maybe around the Chicago area or possibly somewhere
across the
else.
street.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to do that unless the actual attendance continues to grow. My understanding as far as attendance this year, it's been pretty consistent for what it's been over the last few years.
I think they said that it increased this year.
Well, yeah, it's going to increase and decrease a little bit, but it depends on whether or not it continues to increase and increase enough. Like 2014, because of the Godzilla movie that came out that year, they were saying that was, I think, one if not the most highly attended G Fest ever, which was actually 21. And then I'm expecting something similar this next year with the new King of the Monsters.
Oh yeah,
film.
and
I'm
especially
sure.
with them inviting, was it the I forget his name. It's Jason something. Not only he did the middle head of Ghidorah, but he also played as George
Yeah. Well, and I don't
in
think it's
Rampage.
necessarily him. I just think it's because that Godzilla movie is coming out and it's gonna
In
renew
that too, yeah.
interest for people. So I'm expecting this next year to be pretty well attended, and then probably the year after that, assuming there aren't delays because of Godzilla versus Kong, it might be bigger. So I don't think the convention is going to necessarily move unless they have maybe 2 or 3 years where the actual attendance continues to go up and go up at least by a decent number. But shit, I forgot what I was going to say.
But yeah, it's like, of course, there is that convention center right across the street, which I think one of the earlier years they had it over there at one time. I forget.
They did, yeah.
I forget
Mhm.
what G Fest they had it. It's like I know they mentioned about it in one of the the 25th anniversary kind of little display room that they had at this past G Fest. But yeah, they did have it there, and I think that was the year when was it Kenji Sahara or Akira Takarada, or both of them. I'm not entirely sure, but I know it was one of the more well-known guys when they had it at the convention center across the street there in Chicago.
I'm almost wondering if the reason why they abandoned it, part of it, I think, was because number one, the convention wasn't as well attended like it is now,
Mhm.
and I think to rent the space there was probably expensive. Not only are you asking like the
Probably.
hotel to, add a block of rooms,
I probably would
you're
say
trying to
that would
rent
be.
that space.
I probably would say that would be one of the main reasons was the price to have it at the convention across the street, but then
Yeah,
also at the same time too, they have an anime convention across the street there as well. There used to was at that erotica convention around the same time
we should have gone to one of those.
several years ago, but now they have it a month early, so.
We're gonna have to leave a month early and stay a month at the hotel.
Yeah.
Porn.
Yeah,
I think
whatever.
we've exhausted this topic. I think we've exhausted telling people how to do their jobs.
Well, it's just
Yeah.
kind of just kind of our way of maybe possibly make the convention a bit better. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking back on it though, G Fest 25, it was good. I think I had it, if I remember correctly, I think I had it as like middle of the road. It was okay.
I think I did too.
But anyway, so who wants to go next with their own topic?
I basically started off the whole G Fest thing. So why don't you kick it off with your thing?
All right, so I finally got around to listening to the Godzilla Planet Eater score.
Hey, guess what? I did too.
Yeah.
It's on Spotify, just FYI.
So, well, and I actually got the CD. Boy, this carbonated water. So I finally listened to it, and here's my review of it. It's a cross between Godzilla Monster Planet and Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. Roughly half the score contains somber pieces, while the other half contains slightly rousing to more rousing pieces. What I found more interesting this time is that Hattori seems to have a particular theme or motif that runs through most of the score. This, I'm assuming, is supposed to be the film's main theme of sorts. There also seems to be more layers to the music this time, if that makes sense at all. The layers add more depth to the music, and dare I say, this may be Hattori's best Godzilla score to date. While I enjoyed the marches and rousing themes to Monster Planet, the music here has more substance and displays Hattori's versatility as a composer in one score. The only other score is Godzilla 2000, a score I've always held as one of the best scores of the entire franchise. In fact, certain riffs from that score can be heard throughout various tracks on the score. Similar to the previous two anime scores, this one runs at just over 70 minutes, with most of the tracks averaging to 2.5 minutes. There are a few that are quite a bit longer, and some that are considerably shorter as well. The score is haunting, beautiful, melodic, moving, rousing, energetic, and chilling. While I have been a huge fan of the anime films, this score has me even more excited, if that were even possible to begin with, to see Godzilla Planet Eater this upcoming year. Hattori has scored another masterful score, and if taking all three anime films into one body of work, may be his best Godzilla score. His trilogy of scores has become some of my favorite Godzilla music, and dare I say again, have even surpassed many of Ifukube's iconic scores for me. I believe if you are someone who enjoys Godzilla scores, this entire trilogy is worth listening to and well worth your hard-earned dollars. Not only can I not recommend Planet Eater highly enough, I can't recommend this entire trilogy score highly enough.
Cool. So, to start off, since you kind of talked about the Godzilla anime, I want to do this Godzilla figure review. By
the way, we have a healthy obsession with kaiju.
Yes, we do. And this particular Godzilla, this is I probably would have to say this is based off of from the very first Godzilla, the Planet of the Monsters, since with the date on here, 2017. Of course, I got this at this past G-Fest, which we just got done talking about here. And I kind of decided that since I didn't have a figure of the Godzilla from the anime, and Kent has, so I was like, maybe I should look into purchasing a Godzilla figure from the anime. And sure enough, I did get one here, and it's one of the, I think probably the biggest Godzilla anime. I think that was over at this year's G-Fest. And I think this is the US version, because it came in kind of in one of those boxes there. But nevertheless, it's not the Earth Godzilla like the humongous one. It's one of the smaller Godzilla versions, which we see in Planet of the Monsters, that the main characters defeat before they see the actual Godzilla itself. But this one here, I really enjoyed the feel of this figure. It kind of has, I'm not entirely sure how to describe the kind of that feel for it. It's kind of has that nice little matte kind of maybe feel, or kind of that matte texture in a way. I don't know if you can describe that. And if you take a closer look in some of the areas of this figure, you can definitely see some like little glitter kind of spread out across this entire figure. And the figure itself, you can obviously tell from the video here, kind of has this nice matted kind of painting on the entire body. with the exception of the dorsal fin, which kind of has that nice sheen to it there. And I really like the dorsal fins on this one here. It kind of really has that
model that you have there, with the exception of the tail. It looks like it's. Oh, I probably hold on a second here. It looks it looks like the mold of the body, anyways, is similar to mine. The only difference is
it seems like on your figure there, the dorsal fin on there, it kind of looks purplish, whereas this one here is kind of has that kind of the greenish blue hue or tint to it, and this one here, and the skin color itself. If you kind of show, if you can bring your figure back and just kind of see the skin color of that figure there, that one seems a little bit more kind of darkish bit there. Well, the actually the video here is kind of somewhat misrepresenting the actual color here. It's like this one here is kind of more greenish than what the video here is being portrayed. But yeah,
t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I got some glitter. You know, when you look closely, glitter throughout the body of mine.
But yeah, as far as the whole entire figure itself, my only, the biggest gripe on this one is probably the tail here. It seems to really kind of sharply kind of go up from here.
That is a weird design.
Yeah, this is kind of my biggest gripe right here. Possibly one of the reasons they might have done this is, as I mentioned, that this came kind of in one of those USA kind of Bandai looking boxes there at this past G-Fest. I think it might have something to do with how to kind of box this figure. And to me, in my opinion, it shouldn't really have been boxed. If that was,
USA does make some poor choices when it comes to packaging.
Yeah, if that was the main reason for making the tail design this way in order to box this figure, then that was kind of a bad choice on their end. I think the figure itself, it should have been left the way it is, and maybe just add one of those tags that they usually do for Bandai Japan for their figures, or possibly do like the Godzilla 2004, like the foot tall Godzilla that I had. Maybe at least detach the tail, still have it straight, but then just attach it back in once you unbox the figure, and then have a straight tail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an idea.
I would say that would be another good way of presenting this figure, especially the tail part here. But other than that, I really do enjoy the figure. Besides my little issue with the whole tail part here, it's a really great addition to my Godzilla collection here. I would say if you find this online or happen to see maybe your local store that carries Japanese items, like over at Kent's Mall, there's a store there that carries unique Japanese items there, but
they do. They're overly priced. I think it was when you were here before we left for G-Fest this year. They had, it was either one of the Bandai USA or they had something that was lower in quality, and they were trying to get like $40 out of it. And I looked at that and I'm like, that ain't worth $40.
But I would say this is a definite recommend for your Godzilla collection if you are looking forward to growing your collection further, or if you just kind of have a little small collection, kind of just a shelf itself. They're like like I do, and of course I can't really do any further shelves in my living room here, which as far as this wall goes here, I really can't do any like bigger screws, just only like picture frame nails on here. So other than that, definite recommend this Godzilla anime Bandai figurine.
Awesome. God, I can't wait for that to come out. I think it's supposed to come out
It's
January or early February, I think.
I actually was doing some looking around, and it's actually going to be coming out January 9th. So
Awesome.
I would say we should do that for our next episode, is reviewing Godzilla Planet Eater.
Netflix, when Planet Eater comes out, let's get like a box set or something, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, of these films. I'm dying to own a hard copy of these films. I want to own them in a disc with case.
Yes, definitely.
I want to own them, sell them like you do your Orange is the New Black Eye or whatever.
Or Stranger Things and
Yes.
House of Cards.
But then again, though, too, you got to negotiate with Toho.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So I'm trying to think, how do I want to approach? Do I want to do it? You know what? I'm actually going to do my favorite Godzilla films of 2018 as like the last thing I do.
I'm going to do most of my top stuff kind of towards the end too.
So what I'm going to do is the next score I got to Kong Skull Island. I finally got around to this.
All right.
This is a shorter review, so be ready to do your own thing. Henry Jackman's score to Skull Island is wonderfully and hauntingly beautiful. His approach is the use of drums and strings with the occasional brass. The end result is a sense of wonder, mystery, and magnitude that is befitting the material on screen. The score is versatile, yet maintains a level of consistency throughout, so that the score doesn't sound like it's coming from a different movie. Out of the Kong scores I've listened to, this one is by far my favorite. Kaiju fans will not be disappointed by Maestro Jackman's brilliant emotional score. It's one I highly recommend.
Boy, that was quite short.
There wasn't much I could say about it. I mean, I really liked it. I mean, with Hattori, with Planet Eater, I could go back and compare it to the first two films.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like part of my review, was sort of comparing it to the previous two anime films. But then, of course, too, he has another body of work within this genre that I can talk about too, which I also briefly discussed here and there as well. Jackman, this was his first foray into the kaiju genre, so it's just like, I like it. That's about all I can say, is I really liked it.
Yeah. So onward to more figure reviews. And this one is also purchased at this year's G-Fest. And I was kind of looking forward to actually kind of the regular size figurines that I bought in the previous couple of years of, I think it was Ultraman Orb and Ultraman X. However, they did not have one here of Ultraman Geed. And I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't have other versions of Ultraman Geed at this past G-Fest here. They only just had one version here. I forget the certain version of Ultraman Geed is here, but I know this is not like the original form of Ultraman Geed. It's one of the other forms. I think they had a total of maybe 3 to 4 other forms for Ultraman Geed here, but this is probably like the medium size versions of the Ultraman figures that they had. There they have like the smaller ones. I think it's like the Ultra 500 figure line where they're
figures.
Yeah, they're kind of the little bit of the smaller figurines. They have like tons of those at the vendors there and dealers
like
room.
2-3 years ago, I bought a bunch of those.
Oh yeah. I think you bought them quite a bit for your son there. Um, and then of course they had like the regular size Ultraman Bandai figures there. And I think I've seen some of the medium-sized figures there, but this year I wanted to at least get an Ultraman Geed figure, just to kind of go along with the tradition of buying an Ultraman figure from the previous series there, like kind of get an original form of that Ultraman. However, they none of the vendors this year didn't have like a regular size Ultraman Geed or the original form of this Ultraman there. So with that said, with this Ultraman Geed, it doesn't really take a whole lot of space in my collection there. It's pretty well painted. There are some couple areas here where some of the kind of the silver there is kind of you probably won't be able to see it there. Yeah. See some of the paintings here kind of overlapping certain areas.
Looks
there.
Belial or another version of an Ultraman.
Yeah, Ultraman Geed is actually supposed to be the son of Ultraman Belial, hence the kind of the design of the eye there. I wish, here's Belial right over here. Bring him over. This is the original size Ultraman figure. You can definitely tell the size there. But yeah, this is Ultraman Geed is supposed to be the son of Belial. There, you can definitely tell the eye and kind of the shape of the helmets and everything there. But and he does play a role within this past Ultraman series there. But apparently, Geed is obviously like the good version of Ultraman, but a lot of the people, like the citizens and everything within the show, you'll kind of see that they are pretty leery of this sort of Ultraman towards the end once he confronts his father in the final episode of Ultraman Geed. But yeah, I do really like the design of this Geed figure, and I really like how it's painted. The legs there are a little bit bent. That's probably my only gripe, and I think I kind of have to have it stand next to one of the other figures. Yeah, and as far as the line of this figure, it's the Ultra Monster DXI. I think that's kind of like the mediums, like all their medium-sized figurines are named. So yeah, this particular Ultraman Geed figure, it's a definite recommend to your collection if you do collect all the Ultraman figures, tokusatsu, or anything, maybe in general, like if it kind of looks pretty cool there. So yeah, the Ultraman Geed figure.
I've always sort of called in my own mind Ultraman Geed Ultraman G's because there was EED, and I just am like, that's one letter different from G's.
there was a time before when the series came out on Crunchyroll, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't Crunchyroll didn't bring out the new Ultraman series, which I think is red and blue. But before this one came out here in the States, I think I called it Ultraman Geed.
That's what I did too when I originally saw it, but I've still got like quite a few box sets of the earlier Ultraman. I still got like Ultraman movies. I think I bought at last year's G-Fest that I have yet to watch.
I know you gave me the Taro one.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm a little leery about going forward with the Ultraman series simply because even though yes, the effects and all that stuff get flashier, it seems like they take this more what I would call ADHD approach where it's all about yeah, like they go a GFW route and
Oh
it just
no,
I think a lot of the charm from what I've seen on the G Fest channel at G Fest, it just seems like at least for me anyway, some of the charm is gone. Like that's why I like the older stuff better because I just think there's this ridiculous charm to it that I
I
think
I after watching at least a few of these, I still think it's the charm of it is still there. It's just it's just kind of newer in a way, and maybe just kind of formulated a little bit different than what we both you and I, and especially you, have been used to. I know you're over the years I've kind of known you. You were kind of skeptical with Gamera at first when I brought it to attention.
Godzilla wannabe.
But you obviously later on you fell in love with the Gamera franchise there, and I would say just give some of these newer ones a chance
I
at
will
least.
eventually. It's just there's just a lot to keep up. I mean, Ultraman's so big. It's a lot to keep up with.
Oh yeah, but at least it's something to talk about.
Yeah. All right. So my second to last segment actually for me that I have is my favorite overall kaiju movie of 2018, and it's a movie I've thought about pretty frequently throughout the year. And it's a film that I've brought up in discussion at various points and rather frequently on our podcast over this year, too. And it probably will come as no surprise to anyone who's been listening to us, at least this year, that my favorite kaiju movie of 2018 is Rampage. Um,
What a surprise!
I really enjoyed this movie. That's not. It was tough. I started thinking more about Pacific Rim Uprising. I saw that movie again for the second time. Gosh, like 3, 4 weeks ago, I want to say, and I really fell in love with it even more than when I first saw. What was it? February when it was out in theaters. Um, so it was kind of tough. I kind of fell really in love with that movie, but Rampage. I think part of it is because it was this movie that seems so obscure. Um, again, it's another video game based movie. And I think, Rampage, the video games are kind of goofy and quirky by design. And I think some people even myself, were kind of like apprehensive. I mean, I was excited about it, but I didn't realize how good it was going to be. And Dwayne Johnson is incredibly charismatic, and most of the other supporting cast is good as well. And I love the fact that they didn't make the monsters bipedal like their game counterparts. Even if they
Mhm.
did, I still probably would have liked the movie, but I don't know if I would have fallen head over heels about it.
It
There's
probably
just
would have been corny in a way.
yeah, and corny can be really good if done right. Like
Yeah,
for
right.
example, a lot of the older Godzilla films. Some of those are corny and bad. Even some of the earlier Gamera movies are corny and good. So I mean, you really have to try to like find that good balance, and that's tough to do anymore. Um, but I really like what they did with the monsters. I think it's a great story, and I like the fact that it's a bit more believable and less cartoony than the game. And the fact that it's trying to be a little bit more grounded in reality, I think it makes that sell easier in terms of the story and kind of what's happening. The effects work is phenomenal. I still can't get over it. $120 million movie. I mean, that's not chump change,
Oh
but
no.
still for something that involves a lot of CGI work and involves three giant creatures and involves massive destruction of downtown Chicago. I mean, they got a lot. They stretched every dollar. for this film, and I
think they made good use of that 120 mil.
it's phenomenal. I would argue that this is one of the few films in which it seems like they really took every penny and they made sure that it all worked towards something. And I really enjoy that about it. Despite it there not being some sort of like a rampage through various cities like the game, we do get several smaller rampages that lead up to an amazing rampage through Chicago. And I'm sure budget limitations had something to do with that. But at the same time, we do get, along with good characters and a fun story, the lack of multiple cities being leveled works as well. Um, I think the obliteration of Chicago is magnificent. Yeah, it's not like the game in which you're going on like a world tour of sorts where you're going from like city to city. Um, but still, the fact that you're getting three giant monsters rampaging through a metropolitan area, the damage is done very well. I mean, it's just fantastic, and the final battle always great and always emotional for me. I'm really invested in the story and I find myself loving the good guys and hating the bad guys. And Ralph's death still gets me even after having seen this movie like 6 or 7 times. So, I never, Lizzie has always in the past when I played the game been like my favorite character, my favorite monster to play as. This movie has made me hate Lizzie. I find myself wanting to play Ralph more when I do play the game. But yeah, that's my favorite kaiju movie of 2018, Rampage. It's just phenomenal. It's a lot better than what we deserved. I mean, you can tell as we discussed about this when we did the commentary, like what, a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I think it was middle of last month. I think it was.
And when we talked about it earlier in the year, you could tell throughout the entire production process, these are people who are fans of the game. They love the game and they wanted to put something on screen that was not only good for a general audience, but also faithful to the game as well. So I think they did a wonderful job.
Definitely. So with that, I've got one more figure to review here. And I know you've seen this before. And it's also another figure that I purchased at this past G-Fest. And I know I've mentioned throughout the entire podcast show that we've done this for over 8 years, hard to believe, that I tend to like a little bit of the kind of the obscure figures and something that kind of, that's really interesting. And this was one of the only figures that pretty much caught my eye. And it's this.
Caught your eye?
Caught my eye.
Oh, okay.
And it's this translucent I think it's a marmot Hedorah figure.
When I was a kid, I was in love with see-through stuff.
Yeah, and this, it's like I couldn't at this past G-Fest, I really couldn't find anything that really caught my eye or caught my attention. But I think it was on either the second day or the final day of G-Fest where where I came across this marmot Hedorah figure. And obviously you can tell translucent, but you can definitely see the insides, like the inner.
I think the word is actually transparent. Translucent, I think, refers to like things.
Translucent, transparent. Tomato, whatever.
No, there is a difference.
But however, with this particular one, Hedorah figure, it's like you can see the innards, like pretty much like the inner organs of Hedorah itself there. Like you can see some of certain organs there. They are colored differently here and there. It's a really unique figure, and that's one of the reasons why I like things that really catches my eye. and something that would really enhance my Godzilla or kaiju collection. It's something that's kind of like a talking talking piece or whatever you want to say.
It's
Or
weird, like you.
maybe, or you as well. But of course, got some moving parts here as well. Just only in the arms, legs, the head, I think. Yep, and then yep, pretty much all of the moving parts here. And it's, I mean, I really can't say really much about this figure, with the exception of being really unique. Probably one of the more interesting Hedorah figures that I've seen in a really long time. Yeah, it's a really cool Marmot figure. I would say if you're really looking into more of the interesting kinds of figures such as this, definitely I would look into the Marmots, the M1s, and I think there might be another figure company that makes the more unique, interesting kaiju figures. So definitely I would look into those companies if you're interested in more of these obscure, unique kaiju figures. So a really good, interesting Hedorah figure to add it to your collection if you're looking for one.
I'm looking at our YouTube feed, and like it's been focusing on me pretty much the entire time you've been talking. Like, I don't know. And I'm just sitting here.
Well, our YouTube feed is at least a few seconds behind our real time
Yeah,
when we're
it's
recording.
been focusing on me the entire. I've been watching this YouTube feed the entire time.
Oh, I'm not entirely sure. So,
yeah, it's a little weird.
Oh, well,
it really
here it is. Here's the figure.
Oh,
I was just talking about.
Yeah, see, there it is. You know, like it probably wasn't shown the entire time. Whatever.
Well, I know it's been going back and forth on our real-time feed here, so I'm not even sure what the deal is if that's the case. But yeah, again, here's the figure. Here's the Hedorah Marmot transparent figure. There you go.
Okay, good. It is showing up. Stupid armrest. Looks a bit padding. All right. All right. I got my last section, at least on my notes here. These are my favorite Godzilla films of 2018, ranked from worst to first. Now, before I continue, I need to preface all of this by saying to people out there, just so I am not misunderstood, again, these are what I consider my favorite of 2018. Not what I consider to be the best, but what are my personal favorites of 2018.
What?
Now, I also have to say this, though, too. This list is always shifting, especially sort of the top half. And I would actually say 75% of this list is always sort of in motion and changing all the time. So this is never obviously set in stone, but it's as close to being...
Well, I thought it was set in stone.
As authentic. No, that's a sword. It's as close to being authentic as possible with how I feel right now, looking back on the year, figuring out how many times I've seen some of these films and what have been sort of my responses to them, etc. Also, I also have to say that El Rey Network, of course, this time last week had a 4-day Godzilla marathon, and all those movies were either Heisei films, Millennium films, and then, of course, you had the weird Cloverfield movie in there, and then you had the 98 film in there. So I'm not going to lie. I watched a little bit of that marathon every day for the 4 days it was on. watching that had some influence as to how my list turned out. So I just want to preface by saying that as well, that watching El Rey's um, marathon this last week did sort of influence my list to some degree here. So let me take a swig of water here before I continue.
Oh, really?
Because I've got 32 movies to cover. All right, so again, from worst to first. Number 32, shouldn't be a surprise, Shin Godzilla. Crap film, not a Godzilla. The less said about it, the better. Okay, the next one, GMK. I thought about moving this one up another spot or two after watching on El Rey, but again, I was reminded of just the same problems I've had with it over the years. Characters aren't so great, and the suits, while well designed, still look really fake in many scenes. And that's always taken me out of the film. So it's second to last on the list, which is 31. Number 30, GFW, Godzilla Final Wars. Again, this was part of El Rey's marathon. Again, like GMK, I thought at one point of moving this another spot or two up. But this film, and I know we did a commentary on it with 01 Publishing like 2 years ago, I think it was. And I really enjoyed watching it with those guys. But anymore, when I watch this movie by myself, it's not fun. It just isn't. There are some entertaining moments here and there. But this is one of those movies where it's best if you see it with a group of friends and you make fun of it. Otherwise, it really, on so many levels, is disappointing. I just, some of the acting and just really some of the choices for the story are just off. I've grown to a point where this movie, like 10, 13 years ago, was in the middle of the pack for me. Now, of course, it's down towards the bottom. Number 29, Godzilla's Revenge, and that's only because I'm not the target audience of that film anymore. So that's the only reason why it's down that far. Otherwise, it's a pretty fun movie by and large. Number 28, Destroy All Monsters. This is one of those Godzilla films that I have watched multiple times over the last 6 or so years, but I find it fascinating. There are some interesting scenes, but I think I'm more fascinated by the fact that it's more of a train wreck than anything else.
I'm kind of surprised you have it down that far.
I've always thought this was overrated. I remember when we first got the video cassette of this thing.
Well, I know you mentioned about it, but I didn't think you would have it down that far.
It's got interesting moments, but I'm not invested in the characters. I like some of the actors, but I think the writing in the film, it just isn't that good. I think this was a film that is more kiddish, and it's not the sort of, romping kaiju film that many fans seem to argue that it is. It just isn't. It's not, because, we had talked about before how this movie for years, even before we saw it, was sold as like the greatest thing ever. And I watch, I'm like, no, there's not as much of this rampaging and stomping through as I was being told. The actors in this film are good, but their characters suck.
And was this film originally supposed to end the Godzilla franchise at one point?
Yeah, years ago. And Ifukube's score for this movie, I listened to it like, gosh, what was it? 14 years ago. I haven't returned to it since because it's almost the same motifs and riffs throughout. And it actually turned me off of Ifukube music for a long time because it virtually was the same thing throughout. It just annoyed the crap out of me. Destroy All Monsters is unique, but it's nowhere near as good as people say it is. I find it to be interesting in that, yes, there are a number of monsters, but just the fact that I'm still trying to figure out why people enjoy it the way that they do. I can understand maybe the older generations liking it because they saw this at a young age. And when you're younger, seeing something like this has a greater impact on you. That's the only reason why. I saw this at the age of what, 13? And I just was not impressed. And as I've gotten older and as I've watched the movie more, I've become even less impressed with it. It just, I still am very disappointed, to say the least, that I feel like I was sold a bad bag of goods. And yeah, I just, Destroy All Monsters is still disappointing after all these years. Um, all right, next one, Godzilla versus Hedorah. Um, yeah. The next Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. I think this one's a little bit better than people give it credit for. And this one, I did move up, I think, a spot or two. Um, it doesn't have the best characters in the Heisei, and Hattori's music here isn't great. I know John DeCentes, who did the Ifukube. I forget exactly the title, but the Symphonic Fury, and then he did the Ko Otani stuff here like a couple years ago. He thinks this is Hattori's best score. I don't think so. I think Hattori's music here is okay. It's serviceable. I do think this movie, though, is better than most fans give it credit for. I understand the credits are, I mean, not the credits, the characters aren't necessarily the best. Um, but I think they're better. And again, people give them credit for. And that final battle, I think, is still one of the best out of the entire franchise. Next one, King Kong versus Godzilla. Just really didn't watch a whole lot of it this year. That's really the reason why. The next one, Godzilla x Mechagodzilla. When I got back into my Godzilla fandom here like 6, 7 years ago, I really had a turning point with this particular film because for a few years I really thought the film really wasn't that great, and then I really started to like it more, and now I don't like it quite as much anymore. And maybe this is one of those films I have a weird relationship with now. Um, I do like the characters and stuff, but maybe because I've seen the movie enough times that it just kind of wears on me a little bit. It's not something that, at the very least, I think lasts well over multiple viewings. This is one that I think you have to like let it settle for a good while before coming back to it again. So next one, Terra Mechagodzilla. Didn't watch it a whole lot, but also even when I do watch anymore, um, just I do find it to be a little bit more inferior, which is interesting because when I was a kid, this was one of my favorite Godzilla films ever, and now it's towards the latter part of the list. Next one,
a big change.
yeah. Next one, Godzilla x Mothra x Mechagodzilla. Again, here like 14 years ago or whatever, this would have been near the top of my list. I still think it's more fun to watch than X Mechagodzilla, but it still repeats very similar beats to the movie that came before it. And I just don't want to see that. I'm not a huge fan of like the way they handle Mechagodzilla in these films. I like the Mechagodzilla design, but I'm not so much of a fan of just how they execute it here in these two films anymore. And like I said, this is too much of a carbon copy, but I still think it's better than X Mechagodzilla because the fight starts like 45 minutes into the film and it just doesn't really stop a whole lot. So it's an entertaining fight. So that's why it's a little bit higher. Next one, Son of Godzilla. I think it's still an underrated film. Didn't see it a whole lot, but I saw it again here with my son because he wanted to watch a Godzilla movie here like a couple weeks ago. So I popped it in. I still enjoy it. I think I enjoy it more than the average Godzilla fan, but it's still, I'm starting to see, I'm just like, well, yeah, the absence of any sort of really good kaiju foe is kind of an issue now with this film. Next one, Gojira. I've seen this movie so often over the years that it's kind of wearing on me a little bit. So yeah, that's why it's where it's at. So now we're approaching kind of the middle part here. Next one, Godzilla versus Gigan. Again, I think this movie is a lot better. I still don't understand why so many people consider this to be one of the worst. Yeah, the characters are really goofy, but I think that's the charm of the film. Final battle, again, like Space Godzilla, one of the more entertaining battles. Next one, Godzilla versus Megalon. Part of the reason why I had this up a little bit higher is sentimental value. Second Godzilla film I ever saw. But also, I've really grown to enjoy the story more, even though there isn't much to it. The final battle is fun. Ever since they brought out the Blu-ray and DVD copy of this film, what was it, back like in 2012 when we finally got like the uncut widescreen version of this film, I've been in love with it because it's not cut up and censored and all that stuff anymore. So that's why I have it where I do. Next movie is actually may surprise some people, and it kind of surprised me as far as where I put it. But again, El Rey had something to do with this a bit as well, and that's Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. Longtime listeners know I've never been much of a huge fan of this film, although I've always said that I've found that most of the kaiju scenes in this film were done really well. Seen this film several times over the Christmas holiday made me realize that not only are the kaiju moments still really good in this, but I'm starting to kind of enjoy the characters a little bit more. Some of the characters are still kind of goofy and not so great, but they've grown on me just a little bit, just enough. Next one, Godzilla X Megaguirus. Again, like 12 or so years ago, this would have been down at, if not near the bottom of the list. Fallen in love with it a little bit more. Definitely very creative, very original in many respects. I do love that Godzilla design, which is the Godzilla 2000 design, which is how I call it anyways. The characters are okay. More than anything else, I just like the story behind it, and I like the fact that we get a new kaiju here, even though the marionette for Megaguirus is stiff and kind of lifeless most of the time. But I like the fact that they tried to do something different, and just the creativity behind it in terms of creating a news story and this alternate timeline for the film really works well, in my opinion. So Megaguirus has climbed up on the list considerably over the years. Next one, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. Again, similar to Megalon's, sentimentality plays a little bit of a role here. First Godzilla movie I ever saw, so that's part of it.
Also, both of us.
Yeah, and part of it, though, too, again, I like Son of Godzilla. This is one that I think is glossed over by most of the fan base most of the time, and I think it's a gem. The characters are spectacular. The story is wonderful. Yes, Ibara isn't necessarily the most awestruck and awesome kaiju to watch, but it's still very unique, and it's the only Godzilla movie in which like the entire battles take place in water. But I think Akira Fukubeku Mizuno, Akira Akihiko Hirata, Jun Tazaki, Ace Yamamoto, and like some of the other guys whose names I keep forgetting. I think there are a lot of great actors here who do very well with their characters. I just think I think there's a good story here, good human story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next one. This one's actually kind of dropped from my list a little bit in recent years. Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster. Part of that was just because I've seen this movie so much over the years that, at least over the last like 6 years, that it's starting to wear on me a little bit. The fact that, it was made the same year as Mothra versus Godzilla, it shows because, again, this was one of those movies, kaiju films that Honda made. He made 3 kaiju films that year. Mothra vs. Godzilla, which was the first. And I'm trying to remember what came next. I can't remember if it was Dagora or this one, but you can tell that this movie was part of that rush job. And that is starting to annoy me a little bit too. It's still fun in many respects, but it's starting to wear and tear on me a little bit. Part of that's my fault because I watched it quite a bit for a while.
Probably because of you.
Yeah. Next one is Godzilla versus Destroya. years ago, this would have been near, if not at the top of my list. But still, it's relatively high here. Again, El Rey had something to do with it because it reconnected me with a film that like I said just a moment ago, was at or near the top of my favorites list. It's a film that, um, I really think is good. I mean, sure, there's some stiffness to the Godzilla and especially the Destroyer suits, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. But I do like the fact how it comes full circle with the Oxygen Destroyer, and the ending battle is just brutal. Destroyer is one malevolent SOB. I mean, I really do like this film. I think it's done relatively well. It would have been nicer if they try to make the stakes high in the film, and I think they do a decent job of that, but they could have done maybe a better job of that. But still, and the ending, Godzilla's meltdown, um, still gets me every time. And Ifukube's score here is one of the better ones to the franchise that he's done. So next one. This one's actually jumped up on my list quite a bit over the last 6 years, and it's Godzilla vs. Mothra, the 1992 film. Years ago, I would have had this one further down my list simply because the human characters I just didn't think were all that great. And I thought it was an okay film. But I've grown to enjoy those human characters, and I really enjoy the final battles more. It really is staged well and done magnificently. I mean, there isn't a ton of model work, but the way they film it makes it incredibly exciting, and the way they handle Godzilla there towards the end is just wonderful. Um, I really dig it. Again, sadly, the Mothra and Batra final forms are stiff. That's
Mainly Batras, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just been a problem throughout the Heisei. A lot of stiff marionettes. That's just the unfortunate part about that era of Godzilla films, but it's still entertaining. I really dig it. Next film, Godzilla Raids Again. Again, another film that I think a lot of the fans just sort of brush over simply because they think it's dull. On the contrary, I enjoy it. I don't mind the narration so much by Tsukioka. I still find it entertaining. It's always been one of my favorite films. Next one, Godzilla vs. Godzilla 2. Done really well. Great battle sequences. Mechagod. This might be my favorite incarnation of Mechagodzilla ever. I think how they pilot it and handle that aspect of Mechagodzilla is a lot better than what they did in the Kaiju saga. The fact that Rodan is in it too adds to it. Again, sadly, another stiff Rodan, or just another stiff flying kaiju marionette as part of the story. It's very touching too because Godzilla's trying to get his son and protect his son, take him home, and here G-Force is trying to kill him and use the baby Godzilla as bait and all that. It's very touching. And again, I think Ifukube's score here is one of his finer ones of the entire franchise. Next one. This one came as a shocker to me as far as where I placed it. And again, anybody who knows me and anybody who's listened to this podcast long enough will find this to be a shocker as well. Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. The reason why I have it down here.
What number?
Let's see. Let me take a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's at number 9. So it's still in the top 10, but it's at number 9. So
that's kind of surprising.
Yeah, and I still really enjoy the movie, but again, like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, I've watched this movie though more than any other Godzilla movie. I have watched it so many times that I think I've kind of burnt myself out on it a little bit. So I think that's the reason why I put it where I did. Number 8, Godzilla Monster Planet. Again, the anime Godzilla stuff I think is some of the most creative work Toho has done to the property in years. I like the story. I like the characters. I do want to see more of this sort of thing. It's fantastic stuff. I like the story. Number 7, The Return of Godzilla, or otherwise known as Godzilla 1985. Dig this movie. Years ago, as a kid, I would have had it near the bottom. Now it's near the top, and I really like it. I really like the hauntingness, the creepiness of this film. The score, I think, is wonderful. There are a lot of things I really like about this film. Let's see, was it number 6? Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. I think tensions are ramping up and things are building up to Planet Eater. And I really like the story here with what they did with Mechagodzilla City. It's really creative, very unique. Haters gonna hate, and I really like what Toho has done here with this anime trilogy. It's very unique. It's a shot in the arm to a character and a franchise that really needs some uniqueness and creativity.
I think so too.
All right, so now we're in the top 5. Here we go. Number 5, Godzilla 2000. In my opinion, hands down the best of the Millennium Era of films. And like I said, El Rey had all these films, all the Millennium films over the Christmas holiday. I saw each and every one of them. Godzilla 2000 just is still hands down, I think, the best. And I wish fans would really give this one a second chance because the actors in here are the best of that era. They really are. There's more depth to them than you'll find anywhere else in the Millennium Era. The fact, too, that you get more miniature work here, you get more detailed miniature work here. Takayuki Hattori's score, as I've said in past podcasts, I think this is one, if not his best, scores he's ever produced. Just absolutely wonderful. I really enjoy the score here. I'm invested in the characters and their story, both good and villains. I do like Orga as a villain too. That final fight is always brutal. I remember when we first saw it in the theaters, I remember at one point like Godzilla was getting the crap kicked out of him, and I would remember I was like, oh no, Godzilla kicked the crap. Like I was, into it, and I still get into it. And it's just done really well. And again, I think fans not only need to take a second look at this movie and give it another chance, and I think really fans need to look at this film and be like, yes, this is like the best in the Millennium series. But I really think too, it just the design of Godzilla is unique. The Orga suit is stiff, but that final battle is just awesome and entertaining. I really love it. I dig it an awful lot. The best of Millennium Era, Godzilla 2000, ever since I saw it in theaters, over 18 years ago now.
Where it's just you and I, and then a guy and his son.
Yeah. It just, and maybe part of it is sentimentality, but really, in all honesty, though, too, I do think this is the best of the Millennium Era. The rest of the Millennium Era films seem cheaper to me in many respects. Most of the acting, I don't think, comes anywhere near as good as what it is
and
here.
even the visual effects in that movie were pretty damn good.
Pretty good, yeah. They weren't spectacular, but they were pretty good. And I think, too, fans need to acknowledge that Tako Akawara, who directed this film, but he also directed Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Godzilla 2, and Godzilla vs. Destroya. He needs to be recognized, I think, by the fan base as like one of the best Godzilla directors there is. I think he made some really good, solid films.
I hope they bring him back if whenever Toho decides to do like their supposed Godzilla or kaiju universe.
Well, it depends if he wants to do it too.
Yeah, true.
I would like to see him come to G-Fest.
Oh yeah.
So final 4 here. Number 4, Godzilla vs. Biollante. Really love the story of this. When I first saw it years ago, I was very disappointed. But as I've gotten older, I've begun to understand more of what the story is about. And I really think it's a wonderful film. There's a lot of Godzilla action in it. I still am kind of disappointed in the Biollante fights, though, especially that final one. You think you had this crocodile looking like, this gigantic kaiju that, it would be, more of a bigger, prominent battle. And sadly, it just isn't. But as I've gotten older, though, too, because I've seen this movie enough times, I just kind of grown to accept it more too. So, yeah,
I remember this used to been, I think, your favorite for last year, I believe.
it might have been. There was a period of at least I think a couple of years where this was like in the top two for me. Number three, Mothra versus Godzilla. I do watch this film more than most other Godzilla films. The only other Godzilla film I watch more than this is Monster Zero. But um, I watched this movie relatively recently. I think it was like in the last 3 weeks. I watched it
Which
again. I
one
think
is this again?
Mothra versus Godzilla.
I know we did the commentary, of course, for it.
Yeah, that was probably it. Actually,
it was this past December
yeah.
8th.
I saw something yesterday, but
Oh, I wonder where.
yeah. But yeah, I really did like this film. The acting's great. The adult Mothra looks really good. Might be the best adult Mothra ever. Um, Fantastic, just a fantastic film. And Ifukube's music. Mwah. All right, so anybody who's been keeping track of kind of the films I've done knows what's coming next. And some of you may be rolling your eyes. Oh no, you put the final two American films you're in your top two. Yes, I did. So, so now the
Oh,
question
jeez.
is, where are they going to be placed? Um, this was at the top two here were two that I actually changed, and again, El Rey had something to do with this. Um, my number two, Godzilla 2014.
I figured.
Love the film. This was at number one until El Rey put on the 98 film. I'll talk about that here in a moment. But the 2014 film still is spectacular. I just saw that thing 3 times in theaters. Um, I love that Godzilla design. It might just be my favorite Godzilla design of all time. The Mutos, again, getting new villain kaiju is always a thumbs up for me. You win a lot of points just by bringing in new villains. I really dig that. And I love it. The effects work is great. The characters, they're not the greatest of all time, but I think they're better than people give them credit for. Just a wonderfully fantastic film. You feel for Godzilla, especially towards that final fight. You know, when he's getting, you know, tag teamed a couple times, and you see him in pain and stuff. Like, you feel for him. It's done really well. And so number one, obviously, is Godzilla 98. And this shouldn't be too much of a shocker for people because, again, if you follow the podcast, this has been one of my top three favorite Godzilla films, really, for the last 20 years. So I just, I love this film. And I'm not going to go into another monologue about it because you guys can watch previous episodes where I go off on the fandom and how hard I think they're being on this film. But I love the characters, love this Godzilla, love the Godzilla design. I do believe they show a lot of emotion with this Godzilla. Again, the final, his death is so emotionally impactful to me. And when I watched this film, I thought to myself, and when I got done watching it on El Rey one day, I'm like, you know what? Every time I watch this film, I'm reminded of how much I love it. And again, some sentimentality plays to this because this was the first Godzilla film I ever saw in theaters. So that comes into play. To some extent, I still remember seeing certain scenes in the theater with this film. So that has something to do with it. But I really love the story. I love the fact that we get a different design. We get a Godzilla that's actually speedy. We get a Godzilla that, again, gives a shot in the arm to the franchise. I think this film has always been treated very unfairly. And I love it. I love the characters. I think what Emmerich and Devlin did here is masterful work. I love David Arnold's score to this film. The effects work, especially if you were to watch the Blu-ray version of this, the effects work, they remastered it. Oh my gosh, it just looks wonderful. I love this film so much. I really do. And it reminds me, I fall in love with the entire franchise again, quite frankly, when I watch this movie, because it's fun. It's incredibly entertaining. It's everything that a Godzilla movie should be. And I love it. I love it. So there we are.
Who would have known?
All right.
But yeah, so onwards to my list. Kind of getting towards the end here. I want to start off with my top scores of 2018. I only just have 4 on this list. It's not going to be ranked from worst to best, but I do have them numbered, sort of say. So here's kind of my top 4, and my number 4. This one was I actually have had the CD many years ago, back in the late 90s. And this just kind of recently resurfaced on my radar. And it's actually on now on Spotify. I'm not even entirely sure where I have the CD for this one, but I think you're familiar with this one here, Kent. It's Monster Mania.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Music from the classic Godzilla films from 1954 through 95. Obviously, these aren't like the actual scores, like they just put together this CD, but these are a remaster from I'm probably going to be butchering this record label. It's Varese Saraband. I think that's how I'm probably butchering it. Varese Saraband Records, who did this
Who's the
CD.
composer?
They didn't really list the composers. They only just listed, according to Spotify, the composer who did these tracks. So like, basically all these are remastered, but they named them who actually written these scores to them. So like, who did the main Godzilla theme? It was Akira Fukube, and so on and so forth. But they on this CD or album, they had from the original Godzilla, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and Godzilla vs. Destroya, Godzilla, or should I say Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Bylane, all of those sorts of music from the classics. They'll at least have maybe 2 to 3 from per each film. They didn't have like all of the Godzilla films from that time, but just kind of the more memorable scores from certain Godzilla films and everything. And the remaster, when I got this CD many years ago, I thought it was like the original scores, but then come to find out they were just remade or remastered, so to speak. And however, as time went on, I really enjoyed this album that this certain record label created here. It's really unique. I really like the way how they interpreted these classic Godzilla film scores, like the main theme for Godzilla, or Godzilla Return of Godzilla and I would say Godzilla vs. Destroyer, so on and so forth. And I would say if you ever find this album like a physical CD, or if you're on Spotify, I'm not sure if it's on Pandora, but if you're subscribed to one of those places, I would recommend just search for Monster Mania, and it should come up as probably one of the first results on Spotify, and if it's on Pandora. So that's my number 4. And number 3, I actually just listened to this last night as I come to discover this. It was on Spotify, and that's Godzilla Planet Eater. And I really like the score.
I just want to say quickly, it's kind of funny that our year-end extravaganza almost turns into a podcast about scores anymore, because I remember 2 years ago I did a lot about the movie scores and all that.
Yeah.
And here I am doing it again, and now you're doing it too.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of wanted something to somewhat expand my top list for this year, because since I didn't really do much with comics or video games for this year, since there wasn't really much going on in those particular areas, since I've already reviewed the Godzilla video game for PlayStation 4, I think it was last year. So yeah, that's kind of the top score thing was kind of more of a substitute. But anyways, let's move on to my number 3, which was Godzilla Planet Eater, which was done by Takayuki Hattori, who's been known in the Godzilla franchise, who's done scores for some of the other films besides the anime. And I haven't really listened to the first 2 Godzilla anime scores yet. I'm not even sure if they're on Spotify. I'm probably guessing they are. They're just probably in Japanese, whereas this one, for some reason, I was able to find it just by searching Godzilla, and there it was. So I decided, you know what, I'll give it a listen to. It was about a little over an hour, and after an hour, I really enjoyed what I heard on this one. I really enjoyed what Hattori did with this one. It really felt like an actual Godzilla score, since he's done Godzilla 2000, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I listened to that soundtrack when I was in college countless times, when I had a portable CD player, just taking bunch of Godzilla CDs with me and listen to while I'm on break from class or anything. So it felt like an actual Godzilla score, and that's essentially it. And I really enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to the Planet Eater coming the 9th of next month on Netflix. And number 2, I haven't listened to this one for a while, but it was, if I can remember, it was pretty damn good. And this one is Pacific Rim Uprising, and I really enjoyed the score to that one there. And I forget who did the score, but it was really good. It fit the film. I want to say Lauren Bath.
Yeah, because I listened to that here like a couple months ago. It was really good. It was good.
Yeah, this guy I really enjoy a lot, especially when he did Terminator Genesis. It's like the way he did the score for that film. He made it to where it was like a freaking superhero kind of score in a way. And
that's that was actually a good movie too.
And I really like the score to Terminator Genesis. The way it's like Lauren Bamp. I think he's really going up on my list of some of the better composers here in the States. But so yeah, I got Pacific Rim Uprising as my number 2, and then of course for my number 1 top score for 2018 is Rampage. I really enjoyed the score for Rampage. As far as the composer for this one, again, I forget the name. He did San Andreas, because I think these are the same guys who did San Andreas, also did Rampage as well. And I really enjoyed the score that this composer did for San Andreas. I really liked how he did for Rampage. It's just really phenomenal. It's like kind of that epic. Really love the beats into it, like the bass, and I really like the bass in a lot of the scores I listened to, and like the cinematic type of treatment to a lot of the scores into these films and everything. It's probably one of the better scores I've listened to in quite some time. So with that,
I think we're in agreement. Rampage is like what made the kaiju year this year.
definitely, along with Pacific Rim Uprising coming in a close second, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, there wasn't much to begin with, but Uprising, like I said, I fell in love with it a little bit more when I watched it here like a month or so ago. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, it is on some level a step backwards from the first one. But yeah, I still, again, sorry, mutual friend of ours. Unlike your panel, this movie is the movie is a lot better than what you give it credit for. But yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much rounds up my top scores of 2018. So Rampage kind of takes a cake, although it's not from worst to best, but kind of my overall scores of 2018.
Do you have anything else?
Yes, I do. Along with the scores is my top films of 2018. A lot of pretty much the majority of the films for this year pretty much were made from this year, which obviously you can kind of tell which one of those are in there. Well, except for one. And these are, of course, again, not from worst to best. And for me, for my number 5 to start off, would have to be, I think you'll get a chuckle out of this one here, Kent. It's The Manster.
A guilty pleasure of mine. I do like that an awful lot.
For me, this was my first time of actually seeing this through and through. I've seen bits and pieces of it when Ken and I arrive at GFest, since The Mancer is always played on the GFest channel once every year. But
well, didn't we finally cover it for an episode this year too? Is that the reason why you saw it through and through?
Yep, episode 114.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, I thought we covered it this year. That's probably why you saw it.
Yeah, it was the more recent. It was the second episode, the second DKN podcast episode that we've done on YouTube. So, because I know you wanted to do that, do a review of The Mancer, like so bad.
Well, yeah, like we had been talking about it for quite some time, and you kind of were pussyfooting around it for a bit.
Well, plus I didn't even have the actual movie on hand.
Well, yeah, but at the same time though too, it was something that I had been wanting to do for like 2 years, and I remember saying to you one time, like at the end of one of these podcasts, like earlier in the year, I'm like, damn it, we're gonna do it. Like I'm tired of putting it off. I'm like, we're going to do it. The movie's like $5 online. Go buy it.
But I think I might have bought it at G Fest this year. Yeah, I think I remember.
Well, yeah, it's on Blu-ray now too. I forgot. Yeah, it came out
Yeah.
on Blu-ray like in April, I think, maybe.
Yeah, so it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait until G Fest and then I'll buy it there. And that's, of course, that's what I did. And so yeah, The Master's my on my number 5 top films for this year. Number 4 is Pacific Rim Uprising, and there we go. Even though I really enjoy seeing this film, of course there are better ones ahead of it. As far as the storyline for it, it's really good. It's much more action-packed compared to the first Pacific Rim. And some of the characters I really do like in that one. So Pacific Rim Uprising is my number 4. Number 3 is Godzilla Monster Planet or Planet of the Monsters. The first installment in the Godzilla anime, which came out on Netflix January of this year. And it's a really unique take on the whole Godzilla universe. And I really liked how they really set up having it 20,000 years into the future and having Godzilla pretty much taken over the entire planet. It's a really new take. And as the way as Kent says it, a shot in the arm into the franchise there. And probably maybe a good direction of a good direction of how to take Godzilla and maybe another way, a unique way to tell the Godzilla story. So that's number 3. And then number 2 is the sequel to Monster Planet, City on...
I had this top 3 figured out.
the City on the Edge of Battle, which again, I really like the unique take of how they did Mechagodzilla. The only gripe I have on this one was they didn't actually have a physical Mechagodzilla in this movie, which I was kind of really looking forward to. And
yeah, I mean, I was too, but at the same time, the way that they handled everything else and the fact that Mechagodzilla was the city, like, again, like you said, unique take. But at the same time, I'm holding out for Planet Eater. And even if we don't ever get it, I don't care. But I'm sure we're going to get it because they made a figure of it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's like if they made a figure of it, I mean, well, we'll find out.
But then again, they made a Shogun Godzilla figure. And we never saw that gorilla bitch ass fugly looking thing ever. I'm just saying.
Yes, but I really like the take on this Mechagodzilla being as a city and then kind of autonomously doing things on its own. So, and then of course, number 1, Kent already kind of knows it, Rampage.
Yeah.
So there's really not much to
3 for 3 as far as best of this year.
So yeah,
Rampage.
You can kind of unanimously say that Rampage is kind of the winner of 2018 this year, kind of as a surprising kind of underdog, I would say. I mean, I would have thought that Pacific Rim Uprising would take the cake for being the top film of 2018 on our end, but surprisingly, coming out of nowhere, Rampage bested Pacific Rim Uprising to take the top spot for being the top film of 2018 for us.
I think part of it, though, kind of basically like I was sort of alluding to when I was talking about it here a bit ago. Really, I think one of the outside of the fact that it was done well, okay, outside of that, and this is sort of playing off of that a bit, but I think the biggest reason why is because I think we were so surprised as to how good it ended up being.
I would say that'd be my main reason, is that I was kind of taken aback on how good it was and how
and I was going to see it anyways, even if they were to make Bipede. I'm sure they could make it look good and like I said, as long as I'm entertained, I don't care. But when I started seeing the trailers earlier in this year, and I started seeing like what the three monsters were going to look like, I'm like, wow, like this is not only grounded in reality, but it's a totally different take. And then you actually see the movie and you see everything played out with the story and everything, how they got to be big and all that. And the like, I mean, it's such a friggin' delight. Again, sounding like a broken record, but it was made with love by people who love the video game, and they made it not just for the fans of that, but made it for a general audience as well, so they could buy into it and enjoy it as well. But yeah, I think more than anything else, this was just a pleasant surprise, as it just kind of came out of left field. We all knew about it, but we weren't sure what to make of it. Trailers came out and we're like, oh wow, you know, and then you finally see it and you're like, wow, like, man, like this for me, as far as movies that I've seen in theaters this year, this would be my number 2 film of the year. I mean, it just was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So, for basically, that's my top films of 2018, with basically Rampage pretty much winning out outright for both of us, being the best film of 2018 and possibly the best score of 2018 as well. So, with that, do you have anything to look forward to for 2019?
The most obvious thing is King of the Monsters.
Obvious.
I mean, that's obvious. I'm looking forward to that more than anything else. As far as I'm aware of, I don't think there's much in the way of any other like giant monster action going on next year that I'm aware of.
There's
Planet Eater, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, there's Planet Eater. I mean, I'm definitely really looking forward to that and really seeing how this trilogy concludes. One of the things I would love to do would be to watch all 3 films. I don't know if I'd be able to do in one sitting, but I, would like to do it maybe over a period of like 3 days, see the entire story play out. Yeah, Planet Eater is something I've been looking forward to. And like I said earlier, Netflix, work with Toho. Let's get an official US home video release on this stuff shortly after you put it on your network. So yeah, I mean, Planet Eater is something I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, big deal. And then Godzilla King of the Monsters, obviously the biggest thing of the year. I've been looking forward to this ever since the 2014 Godzilla. Again, as we heard a moment ago when I did my list, I love that film. I love the design. I love that universe. So I'm really excited to continue that story as well. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I can't think of, at least at the moment, anything else on the slate for next year. Of course, I'm looking forward to G-Fest next year. Not sure if we're going to be, 5 days or a week stay.
I think we're planning on doing a week stay.
We're planning that right now, but we'll get a better idea once we get closer to that time.
And then speaking of which, next month I plan on to put money towards our early registration stuff so we can get that squared off and confirmed.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as movies and stuff, like I said, I'm not aware of anything else that's coming out. Toho, by and large, basically after they did Shit Godzilla, said that they weren't doing anything else for a while until after the Legendary trilogy wrapped up. Um, so, I mean, as far as I'm aware of, Planet Eater and King of the Monsters are the only big things next year.
Well, for me, there's actually one thing that we did post on our Facebook page, and I'm probably guessing you must have forgot, is the untitled Netflix Pacific Rim series.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot.
That's one thing I'm kind of really looking forward to. And then, of course, the other two that you mentioned is kind of what I had on my list of things to look forward to for next year. And then another one that's also going to be coming out on Netflix next year on April 1st. Doesn't have anything to do with April Fools or anything, but this was confirmed by Gamaru Island that the manga version of Ultraman, which I've mentioned about from previous DKN Podcast episodes, that it's getting its own anime, and Netflix is bringing it onto its platform on April 1st next year. So, and from what I've read in the manga and everything, this is going to be a really good Ultraman series. I think it's probably going to be one of the better Ultraman things will be seeing for quite some time. So that's going to be pretty much all of those four are going to be things I'm going to be looking forward to in 2019. Besides, G-Fest 2016, obviously. Basically, we're going to be seeing hopefully some of the cast members from Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then obviously from the classic Toho films. I'm kind of hoping to see Akira Takarada come back next year, which obviously he wasn't able to because he had some unexpected surgery or something like that for GFS 25. So hopefully he'll be coming back next year. And then, of course, all the Godzilla King of the Monster toy lines and everything. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing if Target adjacent from my place here carry those and everything. So, and then, of course, building out our new daikaijunetwork.com here is kind of want to focus a little bit more on that as well. And then I'm hoping to at least start kind of a new original series for Daikaiju Network. I've kind of mentioned this to Kent before, kind of off camera here, some ideas we kind of battered around. So I want to kind of do my own show here. Hopefully, maybe middle of next year. I've kind of thought about starting doing something on that. And I know previous episodes I've planned on going to Japan next year. However, I've kind of decided to do some more, try to save up some more money for this year, for next year. So with that being said, as far as the trip to Japan, I'm going to be postponing that. I'm probably not entirely sure when I plan on going there, but obviously I'm not going to go there when they're having their Summer Olympics in 2020. So I probably would at least say maybe either around 2021 or 2022 probably be the more reasonable time period for me to go on a trip to Japan. And then plus I kind of when I was thinking about doing a trip to Japan, I was looking at some places of where to stay and trying to figure out costs. But recently I've been trying to kind of reduce the amount of cost as far as a round trip and as well as a hotel and everything, because I plan on being there for at least a week in Japan. And then, of course, trying to figure out where I want to stay for those 7 days in Japan. I think I've kind of pinpoint of where I want to be, kind of have more kind of a kind of an exciting kind of nightlife style to where I can kind of roam around during night and explore a lot of the entertainment and everything around there during my time there. So yeah, that's kind of my update on the Japan trip for me. So probably in the next 2 to 3 more years till I officially go over there. So yeah, that's kind of my things to look forward to.
All right, so I'm looking at the calendar here. You want to do the next episode, first episode 2019 on the 12th?
Yeah, that's a few days after the Planet Eater.
That should, unless there's a delay or whatever, should give us plenty of time to watch and prepare.
Oh yeah.
And then from there, unless something else magically comes up, I think we're going to get back to the schedule I had produced a while back, which means diving more into the revisiting of the Godzilla universe.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's our year-end episode. Again, very heavy on the music. It seems like that's kind of what the year-end episode is all about anymore. But we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to no one for watching on YouTube and getting involved. But yeah, if you're ever interested in being on the show, even if it's just one time, pop us a message on Facebook and we'll work some things out.
Yeah, and also make sure to like and subscribe as well if you like kind of what we're doing here, just talking about kaiju-related stuff here, anything, film, scores, figures, whichever. So yeah, just and also hit the notification bell to get any new updates on what we do as far as live podcast shows or when we upload videos here and there, especially from G Fest. So and then what's that?
Well, and especially if you're listening to us on iTunes, please leave
audio only. Yeah.
Please leave us a 5-star rating if you think we're worthy of it. Otherwise, don't review us at all, please.
And as well as Google Play Music as well, since our podcast is on there too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We will see you again in 2019. It's going to be still another big year. You got Planet Eater coming up here just in a week and a half, 2 weeks from now. And then you got King of the Monsters, which is very likely going to be the biggest event for the year for kaiju films. So be on the lookout for 2019. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. My hope, though, too, for us is that maybe we can wrap up the entire Godzilla franchise, revisiting it at some point this next year.
Yeah, and then we can finally talk about something else. Because it seems like for the past 8 years, we just think.
I do have other things on here, so.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I just giving you a crap for it. But anyways, we'll see you guys next year in a couple of weeks.